All right, everyone. So in this video, we want to discuss how do you validate a introverted feeling or FI in general. Now this is going to be a little bit more geared toward this advice that we're going to go into is going to be a little bit more geared toward people who prefer FI in their stack. But I just want to point out that, this episode is a little bit inspired by the collective chaos. A lot of people are feeling FI right now, whether or not it's conscious for them or in their shadow. And how do we move through that and actually solve problems? Because TI could be like, oh my goodness, you guys are being sensitive. I don't understand why you aren't listening to this sort of TI criticism. So I'll just say before I ask Crystal some questions as our resident FI user here, is that what I realize is that if you want to solve a problem, you can't not validate the FI that is there. And that might drive you crazy.
Because it's causing the problem.
Yeah, that might drive you crazy if you're a TI user thinking, well, their FI isn't valid. Well, that's where I want to say that your emotion can be 100% valid and still not be 100% logical. Valid is not really the same thing. Really, all
it's
FI is
weird. It's kind of weird how people, because I'm like, isn't feelings like, how can a feeling be like logical? And it's kind of weird how FETI seems to put the standard on it to be like making sense in this linear way. I think that really gets on FI's nerves. So it's really interesting that you're explaining it that way, because I'm like, that makes total sense though in terms of the struggles I've like felt. So yeah.
And I don't think any FI user is trying to act as though their emotion is logical.
Nope, they're not.
Just want it to be acknowledged. So what would you suggest someone do, Crystal, if they're dealing with an FI user that is really just deep in their feels? And I guess that's the best way I know how to put it.
Well, what I will say is that no matter, like what demographics you may fall into, FI, when you're experiencing FI, it makes just people deaf. And like, they're not going to listen to get yourself out of that emotion until they know that it's even real to other people. So in essence, what works for FI is it doesn't care if its feeling is right or wrong, the way FE can kind of be like, oh, I shouldn't feel that way, and actually not feel that way. For FI, it's more like, we want to know if you even see our feeling as real. Like, to us, validation is the equivalent to acknowledging the reality of. Like, for me, I can basically take any criticism as long as someone literally thinks that my feeling is real. And it's basically, if they can rephrase it in their own words comprehensively and with all its nuance, I will then take anything that they have to say about that into consideration, because I can see that they have processed that my feeling exists. And whether or not you want to say it should or shouldn't exist, it exists. And if you ignore it, you will pay the consequences. And I will have nothing to say to that.
That is a really good point, is that it seems to me that all FI really wants to know, or all you're really looking for, is for someone to not act as though your feeling doesn't exist. And what I want to say to people, no matter what type you are, is that you might think that detaching from the FI user's FI is going to make it all blow over. If you don't want to acknowledge someone's feeling because you think that it's leading them into a behavior that is irrational or perhaps not going to work, you might think that just ignoring the FI would be a good solution and wait for them to come around. But what that tends to do is actually fan the flames, because you're ignoring someone's humanity.
For sure. And like, there's a way, if you don't have the space to hold for the FI, to still acknowledge it as real in very few words and then detach.
What would be an example of that?
I guess like, if someone comes to me with a problem, I go, hey, I don't have a lot of capacity today, but I know that this is really important to you because of, like, I don't know, XYZ facts I know about you. Like for example, if someone was like fighting with their dad and I had the FI awareness that this is a huge trigger point for them because they have had continuous fights with their dad that has in the past brought up so many feelings and so much sadness, and I'm noticing and checking with my FI that I can't handle that today because I have FI about something else, I'll say to them, hey, like, dude, I get that, like, your dad and you have so much conflict, and this is like probably like a bigger deal than like a lot of other things going on in your life right now. Let's set aside time to talk when I have the energy to like be here for you. So like maybe someone with FETI might be like, oh, well, you dropped the ball because you're not like going and listening to them. But in reality, an FI user will actually be like, whoa, that's like super validating, because I literally said it's in my brain that you and your dad have all these issues, and I said it out loud so they know it's in my brain. Therefore, they can then conclude that whatever I'm going through takes priority at this moment, but it won't take priority forever,
It's
because
being
I have thought about the
considerate.
fact that
It's being considerate of the person's circumstances, but also by voicing like the truth of what happened and how that might be causing a reaction in the
yeah,
person.
it's literally signaling to them that I've considered their circumstance at length enough to verbalize it. And I think that FI users are a lot more open to criticism, I guess, if it's said in this hyper specific way, where the exact feeling they feel and the exact facts that they're reacting to that created the feeling are verbalized. Because it's like, oh, like even if you said something like, Black people, oh, like you guys seem super sad, the Black people, like the Black person with FI is like, yeah, but why am I sad, do you know? And then that would have to be like, okay, let's talk about the circumstances that are making them feel bad. And if you haven't acknowledged those circumstances, which is usually, the extroverted thinking facts that are creating an introverted feeling reaction, if you don't like pay lip service to those, that you noticed that and you thought about it, people aren't going to think you actually considered them.
Pretty much, if you aren't considering the external events or circumstances that have triggered an FI emotion in the person, then what you're doing is pretty much acting as though the person is overreacting or being dramatic. But if you take the time to consider the effects of the emotion, would you agree that FI users tend to view their emotions as like the sort of natural response of whatever is happening? Or
yes, it's like a knee-jerk response. Like if you hit my funny bone, it's gonna go a certain way. Like I do think that FI users kind of view like, well, if I get exposed to this TE toxin or something of like, I don't know, racism or something, then bam, my FI is gonna feel XYZ way. Like, or the toxin of like classism, I will feel XYZ way. It's like this kind of like formulaic way almost of understanding.
And do you believe that, gosh, what was I going to say? I had a question to that, but I also have another question. So I'm going to say this one and then come back to that. Is I was going to ask, what do you do if you feel like an FI user is like self-sabotaging in some way? Like, oh wait, I know what I was going to ask you is, do you believe that it is everyone's responsibility to respond on behalf of their emotions in like a mature way, despite, or is it like, if you believe that your FI or your emotion is like kind of the reaction of what happens and that you can't really change it, then what is the person's responsibility?
Well, I can disapprove of someone's action and still validate the, I guess, origins of what caused it. Like for me, it's like I may not approve of like the methodology you're using to deal with your FI, because if I had that same FI, I wouldn't necessarily deal with it in that way. But I'm also keeping in mind that the diversity of circumstances that have affected you over time are different than me. So, like the way I see it is that we have to acknowledge that there is a reason that they are acting that way. But my philosophy is that if we take the time to regularly check in with our FI and like make sure it's doing okay and be open to doing something really bad to validate it, as long as we're open to it, we might end up being able to actually not end up doing that thing, because we are going to put the FI first at all costs. And I think that what maybe an FETI user tends to end up seeing is that FI users will take their FI and assume that this specific, maybe unhealthy response, like maybe like, oh, I'm really pissed that my mom and dad are divorcing, so I'm gonna go like freaking stab this dude or something in the foot, or like I'm a 10-year-old.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask you is, what do you
like,
do?
no, it's like, no, don't do that. Tommy, but like at the same time, dude, that really sucks that your mom and dad are divorcing. Like, let's
So
take the emotions you're seeing and see why you wanted to like knife someone in the foot as a solution to that. But let's like redirect the original FI feeling and find another way to deal with it.
So that's what I was going to ask you is what do you do if like an FI loved one or just an FI user that is in your vicinity for whatever reason? What do you do if you think that they are making an illogical decision that is actually not only self-sabotaging them, but also harming other people around them? How do you acknowledge their FI even while also expressing uh, your distaste with their behavior?
Well, I guess like it reminds me of one of my favorite authors, who's ENTJ Mark Manson. He once said that you can't get anyone to change, but you can encourage them to ask better questions about themselves. So what I have learned is that I can go like, okay, let's say like my friend broke up with someone else and then like dumped water on them, is now spreading rumors about them. How I'd approach that would be, hey, like I've been seeing this and I'm really curious, like, are you doing okay? And they're like, no, 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 like, don't attack me. It's like, no, I'm just curious, and like holding space to be like, what is going on the inside? Keep it on that. Don't keep it on like what you plan on doing or not doing, or like blaming other people. What do you feel? And so once I know what they feel, which is independent of everyone else, then I kind of ask them like, oh, and why do you think doing this will solve it? And I make sure that I stay really calm, and I guess I make sure to like make it look like I genuinely want to know. And you know, if they like push back, it's like,
Mm.
oh, like I'm not trying to actually judge what you're doing because I want to know why you're doing it more than judge what you did. Like I think for me though, because I don't have TI, I can like suspend judgment visibly on my face of what they did and
It
like kind of almost
seems
block it out a little bit. But like I guess like it's like I have to like surgically get to the core of the FI that motivated that, and then recalibrate and ask them to actually introspect on, did this method actually make you feel better in a long-term sustainable way, or did it just feel like you were so desperate for your FI to be heard that this was the
so.
only way you could think of?
So it seems like what really you want to do is illuminate what the actual FI is and hold space for it so that you can encourage the person to find a solution that is going to actually make them happier at the end, right?
Yes,
And like
yes,
actually heal that. And so it's like you're
yes,
aiding healing and you aren't trying to tell the person what to do. You're just recognizing the wound. And then
yes.
if you notice that someone is like kind of stabbing themselves in the wound, it might
Mm-hmm.
be just because they haven't thought about a better solution, or maybe it's the best thing that they could think of. But I have a
Mm-hmm.
question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that, as you said, like encouraging people to ask better questions, do you think that when people are more in tune with their FI, that it's easier for them to make a decision or solution that is going to benefit them? And if they
Yes,
are less in
and
tune, they they won't? Or what do you think?
yes, I do think that when you don't understand the layers of your pain and all the FI like themes, you will think and assume that certain solutions, like a quick fix, are logical solutions. And if you aren't frequently making it a habit to journal and keep up with your FI and keep up with what actually has made you feel better in a sustainable way, then like yeah, like you're gonna like just keep doing the wrong thing. Like it's like you know, if you just don't have healthy habits, you keep eating junk food because it feels good, as
Mm.
opposed to teaching yourself to actually crave like veggies or something or whatever.
That's a really good
Yeah.
metaphor because I really do think that. So, as someone that I used to eat meat and I've been a vegetarian for almost 3 years now, I eat mostly vegan. I really do crave vegetables now in ways that I used to not. And I don't
Yeah.
even really crave meat. But I've noticed that whenever I'm in a worse mood, I'm more likely to crave like pizza or something. And when I'm in a better mood, I might like crave a salad. And that's just me. I'm not saying that is how it has to be for you, but I've noticed that like sometimes like your body has to get used to it, and like what you crave kind of depends on the health of how you've been healing yourself. And so do you believe that FI users, if they are in pain, that they can, so this, sorry if this is harsh, let me, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I almost am wondering if an FI user is in pain, and they don't really see a way to self-soothe, do they crave pain? Does pain validate?
Yeah. I would say, I don't think that's harsh, because you were like, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm like, good, because that's actually a good example, because FETI users never say, correct me if I'm wrong, and are
That
ginger
was me
about it.
trying to literally validate the FI, because I could have just flippantly been like, oh, so do you guys crave pain then? And then FI users might be like, hey, that
Hey!
was mean.
No, but you were like, correct me if I'm wrong. Talk slowly. Do you crave pain? Like, I would register, oh, she's talking slowly. She's down to be wrong. And maybe I will still be annoyed, but it will not hurt as much as if it's like, did you even think about that? It's like, yeah.
And I'm
So,
trying to
okay.
process why that would be. And one of the reasons why it might be is because it would be more validating than other things.
Yes, we crave the pain because if nothing else is going to make our FI feel real, because if we look out and there's just no way to get gratification, we just make it hurt more because we just want to feel real. Like, in the end of the day, it's like, oh, your feelings aren't valid, skips over. It's like, well, what is this feeling inside of me then? It's like, you can't get away with it. You can't get away from it. And I think that
Yeah.
FI just, really, and I think so, because I just want to break this down real fast because I got to go. But what I want to say is, I think that it takes much longer practice to learn to validate FI than people realize. Like, that's something that can really be learned overnight. But I think learning to phrase your questions before you just give advice is to be like, so is what I'm hearing blah, 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 blah? Or is the reason you're feeling this because of blah, 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 blah?
Yeah.
Like, just literally, if you don't know what the circumstance they're reacting to is, guess and guess and guess until you get there. Like, therapists are excellent at holding space by being like, so what I'm hearing is you feel this way because of this. That's like a good script.
So I have a couple things. I know you have to go, but I have a couple, I guess, questions. Is one, can you change your FI, or is the answer that only the individual person can change their own through feeling and healing and transforming?
I would say that you have to change your perception of the facts, and sometimes change the facts themselves for your FI to change. You have to actually like see it differently.
Yes, because like, TE is the external world that then impacts your FI directly.
Yes, so it's not about skipping over the FI, but about redirecting how to healthily let it out, or alchemizing it into a creative outlet or something. It's taking the FI and just remixing the result, and also being like, I used to be, for example, for me, it used to be like, oh, like, I think everyone hates me because they always ignore me when I talk a lot. And now it's like, oh, they just get confused. And when confused people like are confused, they avoid. And so if I just work on not being as confusing versus talking less, like it's like this idea that like
yes,
the
it
solution
does change the facts. Yeah.
used to be like, oh, like I just have to stop talking, not be me. It's like, well, I guess I can talk about other kinds of things to like, it's like more like troubleshooting what's actually going to help the FI feel real.
That's a really good example of how your TE could be sort of flippant and make a conclusion that actually hurts you more.
It's like, I'm just going to die alone. It's like, wait a minute, I'm not going to die alone.
Then you tell
What is the
yourself
proof?
like, then you tell yourself, I can't be me, and so I have to choose this so that I can get love. And then you're like playing this game with yourself where it's like, I either have love or I'm myself, and then that's obviously going to cause turmoil.
It's this binary that's not true. Yeah. And yeah, TI is actually very good at helping me see the gray, which will probably be for another video. But I think that it first has to learn to be like, is what I'm interpreting about your situation even correct? Or is there more things you haven't told me? Because FI does not say everything it's reacting to. So it is your job as the FETI user to ask them until you get the right interpretation. And the thing about FI is actually has a lot of patience to tell you if you're right or wrong until you just guess your way into it. So it takes patience, but it can be done. And from there, if you ask them what they think of this advice, you end up having a conversation where you get to know their fucking little brains better.
So yeah. I'm sorry, last thing is, what happens then for people that are detached from people's FI and ignoring and hoping that it will go away? Can you say in your own words why? Because like what I really want to get across in this video is that you can't ignore it. Even if you're a TI-FE user and you want to ignore it because you think it's stupid, judging it or brushing it off or detaching from it is really, all it's going to do is cause problems in the FE.
Yeah, because you can't handle other people's FI if you can't handle your own. So your own FI is actually being added to the mix.
Well,
I think,
TIFE users get bitter and they judge, and it's because they're detaching. So
yeah, and so I think that if you feel distaste, don't try to honor it by like guiltily bypassing it, because if I can tell if you're trying to ignore your own negative feelings. And I think in the meantime, trying to disassociate from it, not saying anything, and just maybe introspect as to why that makes you feel so weird, I think would be really important. Because I think trying to pretend you don't have this FI sometimes, you can like still, if you feel a distaste for the FI,
I meant
try
more
to
like
work around
detaching
it.
from other people's FI, but I guess what you're saying is that that also means that you're detached from your own.
Yeah. See, what you just did there was a good example. You're like, this is what I meant, but you built a bridge where you were like, oh, she thought I meant XYZ, but like they can be in the
Yeah.
same.
Well, because
So
I guess I think that for TI users, it's probably going to think like, well, I'm just detaching from this person because they are hot-headed right now and they
mhm,
are being childish and I don't know what they're going to do. And so I'm going to wait for them to cool down. That
mhm.
seems like the logical thing to do. But what
Yes.
they don't realize is that they're actually fanning the flames
Mhm.
by detaching. But I didn't know if you can speak as to why or if that would take too long.
I think it might take too long, but I do. I guess I can only speak for how they're reacting to their own FI, but I feel like because I don't usually judge other people's FI, it's a little harder for me to think
I don't think
about
they know what they're feeling, and I think they'd
exactly.
argue that they aren't feeling anything.
That
And
is exactly the case. Yeah.
and by some standards, they aren't feeling anything because the thing is that because a lot of your feelings are caused by your TE that is saying these facts that are
hmm
disconnected. But for TI users, that's not always true. Like they might like not be having these limiting beliefs holding them back in the same way.
hmm Yeah. Um, I do gotta go right now, but I
Hmm.
do want to actually maybe like put another part to this and like talk
Okay.
about that. So
Yeah,
let's
let
actually
us
do
know
that.
if you guys have
Okay.
any questions about how to validate FI, and you can always get typed by us. And yeah, thank you so much for watching.
Mhm.
Bye.